What is racism? By Ryan Manoogian. Racism is the notion that ascribes to moral, social, or political implications of a person due to their genetic lineage. This means that a racially discriminated person is judged by the character and nature of a collection of their ancestors and not by their own actions or nature. Regardless, that science generalizes that some men of particular races have potentially superior brain power than others, it still does not compare individual to explain the disparities. It is arguable that a genius is a genius even if they come from a moron community, and a moron is a moron regardless if they are from a genius community. Racial proponents like to argue that the cognitive content of people is inherited and that their character, conviction, and values are determined before they are born, and they cannot control it. But in reality, racism is selectively applied to systematically deny some members of full participation in social systems that are controlled by the dominant groups. The presence of racism implies that different people share and differ in some traits, and that each race has its own essence. First, races essentialize, such as that they are real, natural, and unquestionable. Racism is a result of racialism. Racialism does not take sides, it only appreciates the mere existence of various races or species. Dominant groups have for centuries used the racial ideology in justifying, explaining, and preserving their social privileged positions. When races are socially ranked, racism is born. Martin Luther King once said that he looked forward to a day when his children, and probably those of others, live in a nation where judgment will never be on color basis, but it will be on individuals. This just shows how painfully racism had become and the heavy emotions it was eliciting. For my academic life, I had not taken much concern of the eminent racism because I was brought up believing that racism was an individual decision by a member of a group who decided to act mean towards another member of a different group. I had not realized that racist systems all around that quietly sought racial dominance in the group. However, I have come to see racism thriving on private concerns over public responsibility. In the education system, research indicates that African Americans are more likely to receive more and tougher disciplinary actions than their white counterparts, even if it is for the same mistake committed. The rate of African Americans is substantially greater than the rate of whites, and only a few are worried about it. The effects of racial community include effects where one lives and settles, limited life chances, influences how you are treated in public and in private places, determines how likely it is for one to access wealth, power, and prestige. It also determines the accessibility to education, housing, and other basic needs for human survival. It also raises or diminishes one's life expectancy. There had been nothing like races until the onset of the European expansion and exploration that began at around 1500 BC. Around the Mediterranean, for example, the Greeks thought they were the most civilized nation around the Mediterranean, but they did not associate physical appearances with cultural entertainment. They were even regarding the Nile Valley Nubians a civilized status despite being some of the darkest people they had ever seen. But they failed to give the same recognition to the European barbarians who settled to the north even though they were lighter in skin color than themselves. By then, people were being stratified on the basis of religion, language, status, or social class. Racism is prejudice plus power, not just white and black. The structures of our society are in a significant way racist, since they are an exact replication of the values that the society upholds. They are tailored to ensure that the dominant continues succeeding, while the failure of the minority is almost guaranteed. The worst thing is that both groups have gotten used to it and are now subconsciously nodding in approval of a status quo. These systems include racial justice, economic justice, gender justice, and they are all intertwined. In developed nations like the UK, the Race Relations Act of 1976 has protected persons against discrimination based on their ethnics, religion, or the nation of origin. This act seeks to cover potential discrimination faced by vulnerable groups in employment, education, and in sporting areas.